Welcome to the Power and Market Report. I'm Albert Liu. My guest today is the author of numerous New York Times bestsellers, including Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the #1 personal finance book of all time. He's also the co-creator of Cash Flow, the board game, and co-founder of Rich Dad Company. This year, he released yet another title, Second Chance, For Your Money, Your Life, and Our World. Robert Kiyosaki joins me via Skype. Robert, thank you so much for coming on the program. Welcome to the Power and Market Report. How are you?
Thank you, Albert. I'm honored. I'm doing great, doing great.
The honor is all mine, and I've been a fan for quite a while. I first picked up Rich Dad, Poor Dad probably back in 2004, 2005.
Oh, early.
And it was quite an experience. And what's interesting about you is since then, of course, you've been active for the whole time. The message has evolved. You started with pretty basic message there about independence and financial education and running your own business. But since then, you've branched out. You speak now about all kinds of things. You speak about central banking. You speak about hard money. You speak about the Federal Reserve and macroeconomics. And one thing that I really like about you is that you have mainstream or broad-based appeal, but your message at times can be quite contrarian and edgy. And the other thing about you that I enjoy is that being a motorcycle guy myself, I know that you have a passion for motorcycling, so that's yet another thing we share in common. But what I want to ask you is about coming with a contrarian message, yet having this wide appeal. How do you think you've been able to do that where not everyone has?
Well, it's pretty simple. I keep it simple, as you know. And too many financial experts and advisors use vocabulary or words that people don't understand. So other thing too is that, as you know, there's financial advice for poor people, middle class people, and rich people. And for poor people, there's Susie Orman. And Susie Orman's advice is very, very good. If you can't control your spending impulses, cut up your credit cards. So what happens, and it's not how much money you make. Like for Susie Orman, there's many people who make $1 and they spend 10. Well, you better listen to Susie, don't listen to me. If you can't control your spending habits because you're a habitual shopper, then Susie Orman should scold you. The second category is the middle class, and the middle class is bought into the go to school, get a job, work hard, save money, and invest for the long term in the stock market. And that's not what I do. But anyway, the middle class, their advisors are guys like Dave Ramsey, Rick Edelman, David Bach, and Tony Robbins. And basically, they tell you to turn your money over to either mutual funds, the worst possible investments of all, or ETFs and stuff like that. That's what middle class people do, is they invest for the long term in the stock market and a well-diversified portfolio. That bullshit, but that's middle class. As Dave Ramsey always says, live debt-free. Well, that's not what I do. I don't want to be debt-free. Now, Dave Ramsey is a good friend of mine. So is Susie Orman, so is Tony Robbins. We just have different ways of looking at it. So there was a long period of time where my wife and we didn't live debt-free, but we lived in a very nice house in Phoenix. Our mortgage and all the payments came up to a little over $300 a month, whereas rents in the area were about $800 or $900 for a comparable house. So we were paying less to own the house, although we had debt on it. And what drives the middle class broke is those idiots go out and try to buy the biggest houses possible. So while we were rich, we were living in this tiny little house. It was at the Point Hilton. It was a Hilton Hotel Resort, so it was pretty luxurious. We had swimming pools and all this stuff, but we kept our monthly payments, our debt, really low. Meanwhile, we were loading up on debt for apartment houses. So there's good debt and bad debt. So bad debt was debt on our private residence, and good debt is on our apartment houses. So today we have about 10,000 apartment houses. And every month our monthly cash flow is massive. But had we done what the middle class generally does is, you get a pay raise, you buy a bigger house, new car. So that's why what Dave Ramsey says and Tony Robbins and Edelman and all, they say it's very smart, just live below your means, get out of debt, and give them their money and invest for the long term, buy, hold, and pray. But that's not what I do. But I did that for a while till I got into the rich side. So if you notice, my partners are like Donald Trump. And Donald Trump and I are rich guys. We don't have jobs. We're entrepreneurs. We invest in large real estate projects. I have 5 golf courses. I don't know how many he's got. But I also have hotels. So again, there's poor Susie Orman, cut up your credit cards. Dave Ramsey, live debt free, live below your means. That's drive a Toyota Prius, which is not me. And then you can be rich. So what makes the differences here is who you are and who your financial advisor is depends upon you. So if you, like I said, if you can't control your spending, I would just listen to Susie Orman all day. And if you really don't like risk and all this, then it's Dave Ramsey. Live debt free and buy mutual funds, the worst possible investments possible, and invest for the long term. And that's what you should do. Now, on the rich side is I use debt and I don't pay tax. So what happens for the average person when I say you don't pay tax, their emotions go up and they go, oh, I don't want the IRS auditing me. So they pay their stupid taxes. It's not the IRS's fault, it's your fault. So who you listen to depends upon you. And Trump and I are good friends. I don't like what he's saying about my Hispanic friends, obviously, but that's Trump, But he and I play by a different set of rules than the middle class and the poor. So that's my spiel.
I think there's another difference as well, and I see everything that you just pointed out. But there is one other difference about you. I noticed that a lot of people, obviously everybody wants to be rich, and more specifically, everyone wants to live rich. But they don't often want to make the sacrifices that come along with getting there. And one of those sacrifices you mentioned about not spending or not loading up on consumer debt, that's certainly one of them. But the other thing is that you have to put your mind to it and you have to learn. And I've met over the years, Robert, many people. I run an investment or several investment groups myself. And one thing I've noticed is that the cash flow groups, they are among the most highly attended investment groups you will find around. People who follow you love to learn as well. Why is it that they love to learn and they just don't want to live rich?
You've got it. See, the key is, are you an active learner? That's why when you called and said, get on your program, I'm happy to talk to you. Because I want, like you, I want to encourage people to be active learners. See, this market is changing so fast right now. China's going down. Russia has bases in Syria. He's backing Assad. We're going to try and kill Assad. You got ISIS. You have emerging markets crashing. And these guys who have 401ks, you're getting screwed. You bought you drank the Kool-Aid of go to school, get a job, work hard, save money, buy a house, and invest for the long term in the stock market in a well-diversified portfolio of mutual funds. That's the worst possible advice after the year 2000. It was great advice up to 2000. So that people say, well, what do I do now? It's 2015. Well, you got to study. You got to be a proactive student of markets, of different asset classes and all this. Now, most people aren't going to do that. You know that, and I know that. I just got off an interview with a Chinese business magazine, and I said the problem with Chinese, I'm Japanese, I can say this. The problem with Chinese is they're gamblers. They love, they play mahjong and gamble all day, So I said, Japanese aren't that, Japanese are a little bit more methodical. And I would say that there's I'm sure you see it in your clientele, a lot of them are just gamblers. They're not students. So if you want to be a gambler, just go to Vegas, put it on the red and roll. You got 50-50, no, you probably have 47% chance. Yeah. But the house always takes a 3%.
Absolutely. And, I want to get back to Donald Trump and the markets a little bit later. But while we're on the topic of education, that has been sort of your central theme for decades. And one thing about Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which I think separated it Not only was it very readable, very accessible, but I think it highlighted something very important about mentoring. When we think about mentors, we usually think about positive mentors, meaning mentors that we want to emulate. But you brought out another way to use mentors, and that is to study and learn from other people's mistakes, or to study from the decisions that they've made, hence the poor dad aspect of it. And where did that come from, and is it something that you've always used yourself?